The Motivator Show, alongside Empress Abner. Oh yeah. There we go. Nice and easy. Oh yeah. Hope you're all feeling good this morning. All righty. Nice, easy music for us all, huh? There we go. Let's get this show on the road, huh? Oh! Let's turn it down a bit. There we go. There we are. There we are. There we go then. Let's get this show on the road. And I trust you are all well this fine morning. It's, well, I can see blue skies here in London town. There's some sort of flowery cloud, but it's blue clouds. Yeah, it's fine. It's good. It's good. I'm feeling good. Oh, I'm feeling so good. Well, I'm feeling good, and I haven't for some weeks. My co-host, Empress Abner, is not feeling too good today. So, I'm on my lonesome. I'm soloing. Going back to my original starting point. So this is the Motivator Show. Original style, if you like. Oh, and thank you to Iron King. Well done, huh? Well done, well done. And of course, appreciation to Galaxy Management, of course. So this is the Motivator Show, and remember, this is where we translate our words into action. And most certainly, the mindset must be success is ours for the taking. Oh yeah, let's get this show on the road. Let's get this show on the road. First of all, let's give praise and respect to Empress Abner. She's not feeling well today. And, you know, she brings that extra flavor to these shows, so that's okay. I know she's cuddling up in bed right now. Empress, please get well soon. We're missing you already. We're missing you already. Can you believe it, huh, Empress? But you get well. You take care of yourself. You know, you don't take care of yourself, you know, you undermine your wealth. There's a wonderful presenter here on galaxyfui.net, but is apt to say, your health is your wealth. So take care of it, huh? Take care of it. Don't let it go. Don't let anyone say otherwise to you. Your health is your wealth, okay? But let me press on now then. I want to, before I go into the health messages, I just want to give a big shout out to our guest last week. And I thought last week's show was really quite interesting, you know. And what it goes to show that the talent we have in our community is really quite remarkable, you know. The talent is just oozing out from the community. There's so much talent, sometimes it's difficult even to describe it in its fullness. So I want to give praise and respect to Jack Buller, yeah, of Nubian Jack fame, Nubian Jack Trust. I knew this brother when he brought out his game, yeah, the Nubian Jack game, and I bought it for my children, yeah, you know, and that was a good starting point, going back a good few decades now, what, 30 years or so, huh? Well done, Nubian Jack, yeah, Jack Buller, and since then, of course, he's continued to grow, and of course, you recall the blue plaques, the black plaques, the green plaques, the stone plaques, in memory, recording our great contributors to our community. This is history that will not be washed away. We will remember those who contributed, made positive contribution to our community's evolution, to its development, to our reaching for the skies and getting there, regardless of all the encumbrances. I give praise and respect to Jack Buller of Nubian Jack fame. Praise be, my brethren, praise be. Long may you continue your fantastic works. But I recall what you said last week. That is, of course, how we recognize you. Because, of course, much of this was done for no financial gain. Okay? So I want the community to remember that. Much of his achievement was for no financial gain. I'm very conscious of that. And I believe we as a community have a responsibility to ensure that such creative, innovative, forward-thinking brothers and sisters that we have out there are suitably compensated. You know, I know they don't do it for money, but we need to make sure that they are financially stable. Yeah. That's what I just want to say back to the community. But praise be, and praise Jah Rastafari to Jack Buller, yeah? Long may you continue your outstanding works. Long may that continue. I also want to give praise and respect to my previous week's contributor. You know, I refer to this brother as being an artistic genius, yeah? An inspired activist, a writer, a singer, an actor, a producer, yeah? I want to give a big shout out to that wonderful genius, many in the community, Teo Aluko, yeah? And if you didn't watch or hear that show, you can find a copy of the show on our YouTube channel, okay, which is The Motivator Show. DE space Motivator space Show. The Motivator Show. You can find us on YouTube, yeah, and you can see a copy of the past shows for the past year or two that I've been using YouTube. It's been a fantastic journey, and he was most certainly a most outstanding contributor to this show. Well done. The Motivator Show is also to be heard on Facebook under the same name. Go to our channel on Facebook. And of course, if you want a pure audio experience, then of course you can also hear this show, recording of this show on Mixcloud, again under The Motivator Show. And those of you listening to us via galaxyfreeway.net, I hope the sound is good quality. I think we've got over most of those early technical problems now. We'll continue to upgrade our technologies and innovate the ways in which this show is heard by you and others around the world. So thank you for your continued support. I hope we can maintain our standard and continue to excel the quality and production of each of these shows. So if I may, I want to now turn to those crucial messages. These are not instructions. These are not commands. Yeah? These are not dictates. These are suggestions, hopefully helpful suggestions. Because whilst I am the motivator, yeah, where we translate our words into actions, most certainly, I'm also an elected official. Okay. As an elected official, I see, in this case, local health stats. And when it relates to our community, they make for uncomfortable reading. In fact, often disturbing reading, because many of the health maladies that we experience in our communities are actually avoidable. And we've got to talk about our health, regularly talk about our health, then translate those talks into action. That's why I do these shows. Yeah? Talking is great, but action speaks louder than words. They make for uncomfortable reading because our personal action can make the difference. As my comrades and brothers and sisters and elders in the Global African Congress would say, reparations starts with self. I repeat, reparations starts with self. You cannot demand and insist upon reparations from others if you're not doing it to yourself. And that begins at home with yourself. So I simply ask you, please, to consider the amount of sugar that you are ingesting into your body. Consider the long-term implications. Do you need to add sugar to your teas and coffees? Do you need to drink the quantum of soft or sweet or fizzy drinks that are easily accessible to us? Should you be eating these large chunks of cakes? Consider the long-term implications. You recall an earlier guest of mine here, Elijah Timop, when he discussed this with us. And he noted the tendency for our bodies to become numb to sugar or sucrose. And it builds dangerous build-up in our bodies. And this, one of the typical implications is the levels of diabetes in our community, which is way above the national average. And in the Caribbean, it has reached epidemic levels. And yes, I will quote him again. Professor Hilary Beckles, Vice Chancellor of the Universities of the West Indies, one of the top 1% universities in the world. He noted, not only in his own family circles, right across the Caribbean, epidemic levels of diabetes. So I simply ask you, please, to consider the amount of sugar that you are taking in and ingesting into your bodies. I simply ask you to consider, okay, for your own sake, for your loved one's sake, for your family's sake, for your friend's sake, for your network's sake. I simply ask you to consider. If you don't believe it applies to you, that's fair enough. It is not an instruction. But if you know people in your family or your friends, your network, and you see the numbers growing, just find out from them what happened, what might be the cause. Or speak to your own doctor. If in doubt, I always say, please speak to your doctor, speak to your nutritionist, or indeed your pharmacist. Let them give you the advice. I'm not a professional, but I have seen the stats, and the stats, I'm very concerned. I'm equally concerned about the amount of salt that we ingest into our bodies. Salt, often we put in salt so-called for flavoring, but that is just malicious propaganda, yeah, taught to us by a group of capitalists in order that we'll buy their products. The amount of salt that we consume is way above what our bodies require. I no longer purchase salt from the grocery stores. I don't need to, because there's sufficient salt in the range of foods that I regularly consume. Let your food be your medicine. This outstanding presenter here on GalaxyFreeway.net would say, Dr. Stephen Ferguson. Let your food be your medicine. He's so absolutely right. And as has been said by a previous guest of mine, Professor Kevin Fenton, the public health director for London, the whole of London and much of the southeast. A Jamaican man, an African man, someone we could be proud of, and someone we absolutely should listen to when it comes to our health. So I simply ask you to consider the amount of salt you're ingesting and the potential implications of that: hardened arteries, the raising of your blood pressure. Again, in our family networks, do you know someone with high blood pressure or hypertension? In our friends network, do you know someone with hypertension, high blood pressure? In your wider network, look at the numbers. Young, middle-aged, elderly. Look at the numbers. And could it be you? Just consider it potentially could be you. Because you're a human being just like everyone else. So I ask you to consider the amount of salt you are ingesting. I equally ask you to consider the amount of carbohydrates and fats. Carbohydrates typically derived from wheat products, and indeed those some root vegetables, yam and potatoes in particular. And fat, of course, typically found from meat-related products. You know, meat, lamb, the beef, and even chicken. You know, yeah, even chicken. It's the quantum that we eat is the problem. And yes, I'm going to say it again, dairy products are just another form of cow fats. Yeah. Cheese is hardened cow's fat. Milk or bovine lactose primarily is cow's fat. But for babies, yes. For adults, well, I'm not an expert, but all the indications are that we don't really need it as adults. Honestly, we don't need it. We don't need the extra fat. So I simply ask you, please, to consider the amount of carbohydrates and fat that you're ingesting. And I know, you know, we see some people, those big bulging abdomens, bulging shoulders, bulging thighs and bottoms. Yes, I said it, bottoms. And in some cases, people say, oh, I've got big bones. Or they say, well, you know, that's how we naturally are. We don't want to be skin and bone. But actually, you're carrying excess weight, excess mass. The likely implication for you, over time, you place undue weight on your heart, and you reduce your immune response to a whole broad range of bacteria, viruses, and other maladies that befalls our bodies often. So I simply ask you to consider the amount of carbohydrate and fat that you're ingesting, and just seek to moderate it. As my previous guest, Elijah Timop, reminded us, we eat too much. Ideally, our meal should be, I know I'm struggling to get there, mind you, because I've had lifetimes of habits, so I have to admit I am also a failure at the moment. We should be eating no more than a fistful of food in our meals. A fistful. Yeah? Those of you who could see my fist on YouTube and Facebook, there's the fist. A fistful of food is what he's recommending. We don't need more than that. And you women, particularly the women, I just want to cite some of the women. I have to say, my gosh, we as men want you to be healthy. Too many of our women are overweight. In America, 80% of African American women are overweight. And 80% of those who are overweight are borderline, if not morbid obese. That's terrible, and a health crisis. Because as you get older, your body becomes frailer, and therefore all the excesses you build up in your younger age become a burden to you. I'm not an expert. If in doubt, speak to your doctor. If in doubt, speak to your nutritionist. If in doubt, speak to your local pharmacist. And test the veracity, the accuracy of my words. I'm not here to criticize. I am profoundly concerned about the health of our community. Indeed, of all communities, but most certainly my own community, it particularly affecting my own community. So I say to you, I ask you, please, just to consider the amount of carbohydrates and fat. And of course, the amount of sucrose, which is of course sugars. I'm trying to think of another one that you should think of. In fact, let me pause there on the concern. I now want to be positive. I'm told by the nutritionists, by the pharmacists, by the doctors, those who are in public health, that what we should be doing ideally is eating far more fruits and vegetables. I say again, far more fruits and vegetables. Yeah? Green vegetables in particular, so your body can convert it into blood. In particular, green vegetables. A broad range of vegetables, so you get a good broad range of nutritional intake into your bodies. So your bodies can build from that food. More fruits and vegetables. And of course, it's important to drink appropriate amount of water each day. Ideally between 2-3 liters. Look, I'm not an expert. Speak to your nutritionist, speak to your doctor, speak to your pharmacist. Let them confirm what is an appropriate amount of water for you to drink. I have my water handy here. There it is. There you are. You hear it? I keep it handy. Sip as I need to. Okay. I'll try to get through to my 2 to 3 liters per day. Okay. And you recall previous guest that you should be passing stool. Yes, I said it. I know. It's early in the morning, but you're adults and children, but the children need to hear this as well. At least 2 to 3 times a day. And if you're not doing that, then you've got to check yourself in terms of your nutritional intake. Okay. And most crucially, of course, with all this wonderful food you're now taking in, okay, and water, you should exercise. Exercise is a vital component in maintaining a good, healthy lifestyle. A vital component. And if in doubt, speak to the professionals, okay? Speak to the professionals. Exercise is so important. Went for my run this morning. I feel so alive this morning. After I've run, I've got my weights. Oh, where's my weights? There we go. I know at this point, there we go. You see my weights? Doing that for at least 30 minutes on all parts of my body. Oh my gosh, it really is good. I can feel my heart racing. Oh yeah. I feel so good afterwards. I will not and should not neglect myself. There's a great deal to live for. Yeah. Why run yourself down? I say to my listeners, to my viewers, why run yourself down? You can make the difference. And it's relatively painless as well. And if in doubt, seek advice. I'm just a local politician, okay? That's all I am, okay? But I've seen the figures and they make for uncomfortable reading. We can do better for our children's sake. Because if you're unhealthy, our children are not going to be healthy, are they? So we have to be the example, the exemplars for our children. But we also must take care of each other and help those who are finding it difficult. Yeah? Help them. Don't criticize them or berate them in any way. Simply help those who need our help, our collective help. Because a family that stays together grows together. We can and must do better. I know that my good friend from Nottingham would have said at this point, you know, motivator, what about our spiritual health, okay? Our mental health. Yes, you are right. We must take care of our spiritual and mental health, you know? If you're feeling uncertain in terms of your mental health, please seek professional advice. Do not be ashamed, yeah? Do not feel inhibited. Go see your local doctor, your GP, okay? That's what I recommend. Don't take advice from some random person, okay, on the internet or whatever. Please don't do that. Go to your doctor, the person with access to your medical records. I think that person is able to advise or treat you as is appropriate. Okay? As regards your spiritual health, that's the most crucial part of our general health and well-being. And I strongly recommend, if in doubt, okay, speak to whoever you trust to give advice for your spiritual health. But I always encourage all of you to have moments where you're able to be at rest, where you're able to push away all the cries and loud noises of life and be able to center your energy inside yourself and allow yourself to breathe deeply, closing your eyes for a good 20, 30 minutes per day to meditate. I strongly recommend meditation as a means to find spiritual enlightenment. Combined with those who are suitably trained in our spirit realm, makes for outstanding moments. You improve your general health and well-being. You can feel your aura becoming far more intense. You feel less troubled by life's tribulations. You become a truly powerful person, whole person. I strongly recommend meditation to you. But I want to say and acknowledge, I want to acknowledge all of you who have been watching and following my shows, okay? And I really hope that this will continue in a positive way, okay? Thank you all for listening. I'll now move on now then to the substance of today's show. But if in doubt, you know, in fact, I'll give you a moment before my guests come. If you wish to talk about your health, I'll give you a moment. I'm going to put up the graphics on my screen. So those of you who are not sure of the studio number, I just want to spend maybe 5-10 minutes just talking about our health and what you have been able to do to help and support your health or someone else's health. Feel free to call in now on 0208 133 5616. I repeat, 0208 133 5616. And that is a Skype number. So if you're on Skype and you're overseas, I believe it's a free number. If you look for The Motivator Show, and that number comes up, you can make the call if you're overseas for free. Okay? And those of you in the UK or elsewhere, Skype is a good system to use, okay? Love to hear from you. If you wish to share with myself your health messages. Love to hear from you, because this is such a crucial subject for us to continue to discuss. I will not shy away from it. I will not shy away from this subject. It is clearly a present danger which we must do something about. Okay. So anyway, that's enough for me on this subject. The call line's open until my guests arrive. But what I want to do, if I may, is really talk about a number of interesting events that are occurring. And I know that some past contributors will be highlighting some events. But first of all, what I want to say is that here in the constituency which this show is being beamed from, which is the Camberwell and Peckham constituency in London, okay, our sitting MP, Harriet Harman, has decided to retire. She has performed exemplary. She's been an exemplary MP for the Camberwell and Peckham constituency. It is hoped that I will have a number of those who have been placed on what we call in the Labour Party the long list, or maybe the next week and a few weeks hence, to have a few of those candidates to come on this show to tell us a little bit about themselves and what their vision might be for the constituency. I'm particularly pleased on this occasion to make that announcement, because the majority of the candidates on the long list are drawn from and examples of the enormous talent in the African Caribbean and continental African communities in the Camberwell and Peckham constituency. Okay? And others from across London and beyond, but the majority of those on the long list are drawn from our community. There could be such pride to be able to say that. It's a very rare event, but I believe this is a measure of the positive contribution that our community has made to politics locally and politics across London and nationally. I want to thank the Southwark Labour Party. I want to thank the London Labour Party. I want to thank the National Party for allowing this turn of events to occur. I'm immensely proud of the Labour Party, which is why, of course, here in this borough of Southwark, the local elections saw Labour councillors increase their majorities across the 3 constituencies that make up the borough of Southwark. So I just thought I'd put that out there. So well done to everyone concerned. Okay. Another big shout out I want to give, and I want to acknowledge a number of key persons who I believe will continue to make significant contribution to the community. Indeed, to this borough of Southwark, based here in London. To Althea Lodrick, who's the new chief executive of Southwark. This is not something we usually do here, but I want to give a big shout out to them for being visionary leaders. Yep, this is my platform, I can do this. I want to give a big shout out and encourage them to continue doing what they're doing. Okay, I don't need to give the details because their work will be manifest in the improvement of, for all peoples in the borough, the quality of our lifestyle, how we take care of those in greatest need, okay? How our philosophy, our values are projected through all the public services that are managed by this Council of Southwark. Okay? I want to give a big shout out to all of you who are making a contribution to making life here in Southwark better than would otherwise be. Well done to you all. Well done to you all. Okay. I also want to give a big shout out. Again, it's my platform, so I could do this on this occasion, to all the head teachers and governors of schools across this borough of Southwark. I want to give a big shout out to you all. Okay. I want to recognize the enormous contribution you've made and will continue to make to the life of young people, the children, the families here in Southwark. 30 years ago, the schools in Southwark were amongst the worst in the country. Absolute worst in the country. Today, 98% of the schools are either good or outstanding when compared to schools across the borough, across London, across the country. Outstanding, good or outstanding. Oh yeah, I want to give praise and recognize the enormous effort made by head teachers, school leadership team, classroom practitioners, school governors, which are ordinary people. I give recognition to your achievements. Well done. Not very often I'm able to say that here on this platform. Well done. Well done. Well done. I know we've got a few trials and tribulations coming along, but I just want to say that. Well done. Me being a former school governor myself. Well done. Well done. I also now want to give recognition to another group of people who don't often get an opportunity just to say this explicitly. I want to give a big shout out and praise to all the single parents, mums and dads out there. That's what I want to do. I've come across so many in this particular week for whatever reason. Yeah, come across so many. But I want to give a shout out to all the single parents who have children and are, really trying their absolutely trying their absolute to support their sons and daughters. I want to give a big shout out, and I hope that the wider community will continue to rally round and support those families. Absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. We continue to support those families. And those families should never feel that they're by themselves, they're isolated from us. They are and will always remain an integral part of our communities. So a big shout out to the single parents. I know the majority of those are women. So a big shout out to those women. A big shout out to you all. And I hope the community will continue to rally to your support so that our children can have the best possible start in life. A big shout out to you all. A big shout out to you all. Okay. All righty. Oh, this is a wonderful morning. I'm being able to give recognition to those who we generally don't give recognition to. I want to give a big shout out to all the single parents out there. Those mums and dads, yeah, who do it by themselves. Okay. But of course, I should of course give a big shout out to those who are in that typical nuclear environment. Yeah. Yep, mums and dads, and of course, you could be in a single sex environment as well, of course. Two mums, two dads. It doesn't matter. It's the love that you give your child. It's your recognizing that two people coming together is better than just one always. Yeah, it's easier. It's simply easier. Yeah, financially it's easier. Yeah, you've always got someone there, always, yeah, wherever possible. So I'll give a shout out to you all. those of you involved in child rearing and preparing the next generation. Well done to you all. Okay, well done to you all. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm now going to move to the reason for today's show. Okay, and today's show is going to be truly fascinating. It's going to be fascinating because I'm going to bring in my guest into the live part of the show the second. Okay, and let's make sure I can get my guest inside, and once I've got my guest inside, then I can talk about my guest. Let's see if we can bring my guest inside. Okay, can I just make sure that I am being heard by my guest? Good morning to you. Good morning to you. It's a quick sound test.
Good morning to you.
Aha, great. And your voice is powerful, as I know you are. As I know you are. Okay. I'm not going to reveal your name just yet, but I want to say something about you before I'm going to introduce you, if you don't mind. I first met my guest, maybe a good decade or so ago. Maybe, in fact, maybe a decade or so. He came over from Azania to attend a conference that was hosted by RMT, Global African Congress, and I think maybe one other organization. Okay. And I was struck by my guest because, as you all gathered, I can talk a lot, and I'm sure that I can communicate well. What my guest did, which was particularly poignant and enabled my guest to stand out head and shoulders amongst all other guests that I might have had in the past. Okay, he started his speech using some really interesting words. Okay, could I note that the conference at the time was a bit depressing because he was relating the experience of African peoples here in Britain and around the world. It's a little depressing. But when my guest came on to speak, he smiled sagely and looked into all of our eyes. And there were about 50, 60 persons in the room. He was able to communicate to us directly to our eyes. And he began his presentation by saying, "Welcome, noble daughters and sons of Africa." Now, those words may seem simple, but let me tell you, it was the delivery that was outstanding, and you're going to hear his voice soon. But he said it with such majesty that we were all, and I most certainly, was captivated. And I recall mentally, without writing it down, every word of this brother's speech. That was the impression that was made. I welcome to my show this morning, Sibuso Zaba. Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Good morning to you, my counselor, and good morning to the listeners of Africanist FM and the Demotivated Show.
Thank you so much, so much. And how are you? And how is Azania this morning?
I am good, and Azania is well and alive. In line with your earlier discussion, we are healthy and we need to look after our health.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that reinforcement. And I say to my guest, you can hear his voice. You hear the majesty in his voice. Is it interesting? And let me go. You see, I'm going to ask questions of my guests about his political journey. He was previously, he's mature now, president of the Africanist Youth Congress. Then he became the deputy, Pan-Africanist deputy president, and is currently the PAC national chairperson. Politics has been your life, okay? And it is interesting when speaking to someone whose politics been their life from another country, really to understand their background. And I want to help the listeners fully appreciate you. So I'm going to start with a really basic question that I find, I've worked inside schools, young people, children ask the most profound question at the beginning. Okay. Sir, you were born during the apartheid era. What was it like to live under apartheid? Tell us, give us a sense of what it was like for an African man, a black man, to live under those, almost unthinkable conditions. Tell us, what was it like?
I will request to answer this question in two separate experiences. One is the experiences of our elders who went through a period of gruesome, physically violent, murderous, prison being life of everyone kind of era, which an African was prevented from doing anything that allows them to shine or allows them to reach their full potential as a human being. That's one era. That era is an era that I did not experience, but I can tell you that you can see it in the eyes of those who experienced it. The era where Africans were at the verge of practically being defeated, where even their culture was illegal, was not only delegitimized, but actually criminalized. That's an era that you must visualize. An era where people are not treated as human beings, not treated as domestic animals, but treated as wild animals. That was what apartheid was. Then in the era of those who were born in the 70s and later, we came in the era of struggle, of great success and struggle, where you find that momentum has been built. So there were a lot of opening or loosening of that grip and that torturous environment. So that's when I grew up. Maybe unlike my peers, I was more shielded in apartheid, being a son of a retailer or a son of a businessman who had made a breakthrough on that small window that was created. In this time of the 80s, in particularly 90s, the white supremacy state was preparing to create people of its own image who are African, who will be able to govern for its own interest. It had accepted that the momentum was so great. So you'll find that there was space open and the creation of a leadership that runs the country today, that was systematically created and produced by both by the liberation of our people, that struggle, but also by the counter-revolutionary work that was done by the system. Hence, you see the contradiction in society today.
It is, for me, as you know, we here in Britain, we saw the experiences through TV. Yeah. And I recall the Soweto riots. Yeah. I saw the beating, the remarkable cruelty being melted out to my brothers and sisters, my cousins. It was almost sometimes unbearable to watch. The courage of the people when under tyranny of that type, I have to say, is just quite remarkable, quite remarkable, quite remarkable, quite remarkable. And now, yes, sorry, yes, go ahead.
Yes, if you look at the fact that an African had to carry an ID, cannot be in certain places after 6 o'clock while working in those places, in those so-called declared white areas, and you'll be jailed and whipped for that.
Imagine. Oh,
Looking at the experience of the 1976 or 1961, 1960 Sharpeville, you will see that a number of people were killed in one day for protesting
oh,
or for coming out to the streets. But that's without minimizing that pain. That's a small number. The number that cannot be accounted for, it's a number of people who were carried and buried in the shallow graves in
yes,
farms, who were farm workers. It's a number of activists who were killed, buried, and their family even today don't know where they ended up.
can
So
you,
the level of brutality cannot be televised, and the amount of struggle that was carried by our people can never be fully told.
so I'm not normally lost for words, but I have to say, I feel it right now. I recall those images. They were powerful, poignant images, you know. And the very self type of people live in United States of America right now, you know, and are alive and well in the, I have to say it, in the Republican Party right now. And Donald's failure Trump and his motley mob, you know, are trying to regain power in the United States of America. We can only hope that common sense will prevail in that country. Because, oh boy, there is no way we can ever return to such a state. I want to extend to you an appreciation of the courage of yourself, your family, your friends, your community, the peoples of Azania. I want to commend your courage. And this is my first opportunity in a public forum to say this to you directly, so all can watch and hear these words. Thank you. But I'm now minded to ask this question of you. What impact did Nelson Mandela have on politics in Azania?
No, thank you very much. Mandela belongs to a generation of young people of the 40s who chose to take the struggle of our people.
Yes.
He's a very important figure in the struggle of Azania. However, his politics was quite mixed with contradictions.
Okay.
And when he was in jail, the whole world mobilized around his name. And that had a big impact and momentum in the work that we needed to do as Black people, African people in particularly, that we needed to open space for us.
Yes.
And so he's a critical figure. In terms of him as a head of state, his policies, pre-entering government, he announced quite interesting policies that were supposed to distribute economy to the dispossessed. However, when he got into government, he chose another path. A path of being an international celebrity that is embraced by former colonizers who embraced him because his policy in government continued to serve the interest of the colonial, of the previous colonial I don't want to say masters,
No,
but the
please
previous colonial
don't.
countries,
No.
and those who had their kids who had settled in our country to continuously dominate the economy as a permanent feature, and African people and black people in general becomes the subservient and the workers for the colonial Europeans, basically.
It's interesting to hear you say that, and the question I needed to ask at the beginning, and I just realised that I just received a message from someone. I've used the name of the country. Of course, appropriately, is Azania. But for those who are unfamiliar with that name, and you'll be aware that some will be unfamiliar with the name, I should just qualify it for you. I'm, of course, referring to the country that we currently recognize as South Africa. The people of the members of the Pan-Africanist Congress movement refer to South Africa as Azania. And I might ask you, sir, to explain why Azania? Why call it Azania and not some other name? Why Azania?
Firstly, why should we not call it South Africa? We feel that South Africa is a direction. It's not the name of a country. Secondly, we did thorough research on what we will call our country when we decolonize. Decolonization, you'll appreciate, talk to everything, including identity of things. So we needed to change our name if we decolonize. How we measure the progress of decolonization will be the intangible spiritual elements like symbols, like names. We will, as much as we'll measure it on material front like economy and land. But currently, we see ourselves as not free, as not independent, because we still hold on to the Union of South Africa name that was given by the British when they were here. So, why we chose Azania specifically? Because Queen Azania has a beautiful history of being in charge of the East Coast, managing trade with particularly India and China well before the arrival of the Europeans on this continent. So it has a beautiful history of working with the Arabian Peninsula and everyone. So we got a country that the whole East Coast, which include Tanzania, Mozambique, and South Africa, was part of that rulership under Queen Azania. Hence, we thought that it would be appropriate to call it. You will know that when South Sudan was deciding on its name, we were panicking because one of the names that was put on the table as well among their choice was Azania.
Yes,
It
I know.
reaffirms that you cannot separate African people. African people are one, regardless of where they are in the world. We got one history, we got one source.
You very neatly take me to my next question, but just for the purposes of those teachers, those young people, those who wish to know. So Azania is a monarch, a queen, lived how long ago, just for purposes of the listeners, how long ago did she rule?
I will not have that answer on my finger, but she ruled before the current colonial, the current
That's okay.
before 500 years ago. So it's an era where Africa was at its peak, where it was trading with the world,
I
as I
understand.
indicated. A lot of engagement with Asia, which normally Europeans would like to think that they introduced the Asians and the Africans and the Americans when they arrive, whereas the crossing the sea has been the lives of our people for centuries. if
Thanks.
not many years.
Don't you worry. And if there's a listener or viewer who has more information on Queen Azania, would love to know, I don't mind you calling in on 0208 133 5616. You all teach each other. Okay, this is such an important part of our history, which often is suppressed. And an interesting fact was shared with me only a few weeks ago, that more than 98.5% of all the African cultural artifacts are not in Africa. They're in museums in Europe, the Americas, the Far East, but most probably in Europe and Americas. 98% of all our cultural artifacts our manuscripts are outside the continent, which is why even today we're having this difficulty in recording our history. That is just a powerful testament. But you talked about the Pan-African Congress. Is it a nationalistic party? And are those ideals consistent with the broadly accepted philosophy of Pan-Africanism, the unity of all across the African continent? Are the two philosophies consistent, or are they inconsistent?
We are definitely a nationalist party. Okay. However, how we define our nationalism, we cannot be confined by the borders of the Berlin Conference. We identify the nation, the African nation, as 1.5 billion of us, spread across the continent. So we will behave like an internationalist organization because our nation sits in every corner of this world. Hence, as the Pan-Africanist Congress, we see ourselves as nationalists, but we are in solidarity with the whole of humanity against white supremacy, in particularly against any exploitation that seems to oppress humanity.
Yes.
So we will not, when our nationalism is revolutionary nationalism, is not fascist nationalism. We are not nationalists of hate, we are nationalists of love.
Now, of course, you and I are both politicians. I've heard your response. I'm going to press you just a little more on this one. But I had to do some research in order to prepare this particular question. Nationalistic tendencies versus Pan-Africanist tendencies, which of course is the unity of all the nations across the mother continent. Okay, and you are absolutely correct. The latterly Berlin Conference should not be our identity. Oh, I see we've got a caller coming. Let me just take this caller. You can just acknowledge the caller first of all. Caller, can you hear us? Okay.
Hi, good morning. Just wanted to say what a fantastic show.
Thank you. Did you have a question for my guest?
No, I didn't. I think I called at the wrong time, but I will call back later. When can I call back? I want to speak about the Black History Month event that's going on.
Wonderful.
Right.
Yes, if you could call back maybe in 30 minutes, it'd be perfect. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you for the fantastic work.
Thank you, Corda. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
There you are. It's always good to have callers like that. So, if I may, I just want to press you just a little bit on this, because I have been studying the life and times of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. And I noted that it has gone through some trials and tribulations. Okay, where does the party stand in relation to the current trend in regards to so-called foreigners, particularly Zimbabweans and others, who are coming into the country to work? What's the position of the party in relation to people coming into the country from the rest of the continent to work in Azania? What is your position?
The party is very clear on this question. An African cannot be a foreigner in any part of Africa.
Praise
That,
God.
that's
Right.
that's a principal position for us. We must work on making sure that that is clear that we trade across borders. You
Absolutely.
see, this orientation of the Berlin Conference borders that will end up making us hate for each other. It was designed precisely for that. Kwame Nkrumah teaches that if we're united as African people, we'll be a force that is so superior to others. So it's important for our enemies to keep us divided.
Yes. Yes.
Having said that, we really are hard pressed with misgovernance on the continent,
Yes.
including misgovernance in Azania, so-called South Africa. Because of misgovernance in Africa, people decide to migrate for economic reasons. That has serious social impact, both to the families at home in so-called other countries and in the Azanian society. And those ills causes fractions. And we need to deal with that source of underdevelopment in Africa. People must move around in any part of Africa with choice, not being forced by circumstances of war, by
Yes.
circumstances of underdevelopment. We must combat underdevelopment everywhere so that we don't create friction, because underdevelopment in Azania, so-called South Africa, creates a harsh place for Africans who decide to migrate for any reason to that part of the world, because people in Azania, in Johannesburg, in Cape Town, then feel that the crumbs that fall on the table of industry owners
Yes.
is taken by the Africans who come there. Let's nip this thing on the bud without leaving the principle that the right of return for Africans in diaspora, it's, it's critical as per their choice. The right of internal migration without a continent can never be compromised.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. That's much clearer. That's much clearer. That's much clearer. And your oratory skill, I must say, is outstanding. And I wonder, when I meet people such as yourself, both men and women, brothers and sisters, elders and others, okay, I'm always curious about what were you like as a child? When did you realize that you wanted to become a politician? And share with us about your time as the Pan-Africanist Youth Congress president. And what did you achieve and learn from that experience as being the youth president? I'm interested. This would be interesting to hear from you. Your life.
When did I realize to be a politician? I've never realized. That was forced on us by our peers.
Yes.
You will find that your aim is to contribute and advise,
Yes.
and your peers insist that can you do what you think that should be done. Leaders, you got for the idea. But the biggest incident that I can remember, it's when I was around 6. Unfortunately, I did not grow up at home with my parents. I used to go to live with my elder nephew, who was living about 100 kilometers away from home. When I come back, I used to have a bicycle.
Uh-huh.
And because I lived in the rural areas, there was a doctor who used to come once a week. At this time, this doctor came at my home, and I came back at home. And the young man decided to play with my bicycle without permission.
Oh.
That's where conflict started.
Ooh.
And what made me realize is the response of the doctor who was of European descent, who got very angry and showed other characters that were inconsistent with the loving doctor that we knew once we were in conflict with the son. So that was the first light of consciousness that I always assume that you are the same, as I indicated that I was born in a so-called higher class. Therefore, there is that opportunity that the rest of society don't feel. So that consciousness was sparked there. And there were a series of events that will always remind you that the white system will always remind you that no matter how much successful you are, but you always are black and you are nothing. That's
Mm-hmm.
why it becomes critical for those who are successful in diaspora to always remember that their success is limited to the strength of Africa. As long as Africa is weak, you will always be weak. In my case, as long as the whole society of African people was dominated, we
Mm-hmm.
will always be reminded by the system that you are not part of the system.
Mm-hmm. So this is so unclear then. So why pursue politics to the point which you became president of the youth wing of the Pan-African Congress?
Basically, in universities, when we got to issues of high school and universities, we started organizing around pertinent issues of schooling, teachers who are misbehaving, as students represent management that is becoming harsh,
Mm-hmm.
issues of exclusion of our friends financially. Financial exclusion in school became a big issue. As you know, that the country is quite diverse in development. So
Yes.
you find that some of the university students come from high schools that were not up to par academically. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't meet the standard as they perform in universities. And you find that it becomes our own friend who have the responsibility, who are kicked out because of underperformance. Underperformance that is also informed by living conditions because they move 100 kilometers away from home. They are in these universities that should give a better life, not only for them, but their families. But
Yes.
the harsh conditions do not allow them sufficient space to study sufficiently. So
Yes.
they fail the courses, and the universities are excluding them. So the big picture was not what mobilized us. It's a small practical issue that face students daily that brought us to have an opportunity to contribute. So when your finances are paid up,
Yes.
you are able to get to the systems and be able to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves.
Absolutely.
And when you have a decent room to sleep in and food to eat, and you can prepare for your classes and you can pass, you got a better, we're in a better position to represent those who are academically viable because they are friends. We know their aspiration. We know that they are not just negligent. We go to them, we live with them, but conditions are such that needs to be changed. That's what mobilized us to
Mm-hmm.
start doing the work in politics. In terms of starting leadership work, really that was not my option. I was told that I have volunteered to work. The
Yes.
organization will put me where it feels suitable for me to do the work. Uh, you will realize that when you look at my journey at political work, you will
Yes.
find that I was at national at one stage. At later stage, I was brought down to do politics, local politics, and brought back. So it's been a yo-yo as the
Yes.
party makes it, not as I like it. I prefer more local politics than national and international. But
Yes.
my peers and the organization always think otherwise.
I understand you. And the manner in which you've been able to describe that experience is really quite empowering. Your obvious talent to organise people was self-evident, but it must have been very dangerous. I know we call it an apartheid country, peoples, but actually this was simply they're fascists. And you describe the ruthlessness to which they would impose their will on the people. Tell us, in terms of the dangers during the period in which you were the youth president, was your life at risk? Your followers' lives at risk? Give us some sense of the risks you were taking, please.
As I indicated, that as we belong to an era of transition, some of us as politicians, as this crop of politicians who are under 50, I'm just almost hitting 50 now, we have a different experience to our seniors. Our seniors, their risk came from the state.
Yes.
Our risk comes from fellow African political parties.
Okay.
Those who think that they are ordained to rule our people, who will do everything to please the status quo and want to deal with anyone physically or otherwise who want to change the system for the betterment of humanity. So I was at the position where I had to leave home because one of the political parties in the country had taken a decision. Fortunately, some of my relatives were in that meeting, so they were able to alert me to leave. That was in the early 90s. You'll see what was called black on black violence.
Yes.
Already my name was already flying, and I was supposed to be in the invitation that I would have accepted because I saw those people as my brothers and sisters, and that was my day my life was supposed to end. Later, you will see that when we organized in the recent years, in the last 5 years, there's been high contestation, particularly in local government. Local government in Azania is now ruled mostly in coalition. The margin of win for any party is so low that parties are increasing the amount of violence they want to meet in their opposition. Qualitatively, we are quite big, but quantitatively or numerically, we are not a big party. However, we're a kingmaker in a number of municipalities.
Yes.
So that makes some of our competitors want to eliminate us, hoping that those numbers will come back to them and they
Right.
will go over 50% comfortably.
I understand. It is the nature of politics, particularly where people have been brutalized for generations, so that experience will continue until our culture, our traditions, our ways take over. But until that trauma, more recent trauma, is overcome, what you describe, it is to be anticipated. But I note that you went on to be elected the Pan-African Congress Deputy President, and you are now the National Chairman. How is the PAC currently contributing to politics in Azania, South Africa? How are you contributing to politics? You mentioned just now the kingmakers, that one role. What other ways are you contributing to politics and improving life for all Azanians?
We always express that our struggle is multifrontal.
Yes.
We were pushed by the environment to go to elections.
Yes.
We, at the time in the early 90s, we still believed that armed struggle was necessary So we needed it to go to finality. We wanted a final win. Fortunately or unfortunately, that era ended. We entered the era of elections. So as the party, we have taken this era on two major fronts. One is advocacy, which we do through local municipality councils that we participate in as councillors. So, as the members of parliament, we have been participating in that era. So, we do a lot of work in terms of advocacy for legislation and better institution, which is oversight.
Okay.
That we contribute that. We are passionate about nation building. We are passionate about building strong public institutions. That has been the work that we've been focused on. On the other hand, we have a biggest student association in the country, in universities, in PASMA. Through that, we are mobilizing professionals who can come and work in various areas of society in favor of the African interest. Everything has an underlying culture in it. So we ensure that the behaviors and the culture are that makes Africa successful.
Brilliant.
The last part, I said two, but that's a professional and institutional governance, the two. The other part is practically working in communities. We have a number of projects, our branches
Yes.
are encouraged to have a practical project that changes the lives of our people. You will know that Azania, South Africa, has an unemployment rate of about 48%. That's
Yes.
a expanded version.
Yes.
28% for those who are still looking for a job.
Yeah.
So when you have 45% unemployment, you cannot say that you will wait for someone to bring industry to us. You start working on smaller scales and develop self-reliant economic structures that attempt to absorb employees, workers, to work for themselves, to have worker control production institutions that are coming to the picture. We haven't had as much success as we will in this factor. We still need a lot of learning, but we have a crisis in Azania where foreigners, when I say foreigners, Asians and Europeans in particularly, come into a country to provide us employment. And that's anomaly. Africans should be providing work to those who come to their continent or to their municipality. And as
Absolutely.
the PAC, that's what preoccupies us, that we need to turn around. We need to do the work that Marcus Garvey had started to
Yes.
create our own institution, our own industries, our own agricultural farms that are controlled by Africans, that we learn from each other to know how to live without our oppressor. We have not overcome that.
Yes.
They were always threatening that if these white people, you make them angry and they leave, will starve. And it's true, the way that we behave, will starve. We need to change. And as a party, we see that work even more important than our work on oversight over government, being in government as professional workers. We see it as more important to conscientize the mind of our people and put them in practical work to make sure that they eat what they produce. They detest and despise what is not produced by them, so that they are fully independent, they are fully self-reliant, so that
Yes.
self-determination can be a reality for all African people, particularly to those that were rich as our constituency.
Yes. Interesting. Thank you, because that's very clear. the question I would have asked as a subsidiary to this. So, would you see your party as being a politically pure party, or are you a party of pragmatists?
We still see ourselves as part of a liberation movement,
Okay.
as a party. So in both elements, we are clear holding on to our beliefs and our values, and would like to practicalize them in a very pragmatist method. We learn a lot from the Communist Party of China. Communist Party of China has done things that your typical socialist party will spit on as very bad, but it works for the people of China.
Yeah.
And they learn, they self-correct, they decide at any time when they need to change policy. We don't change our values, we don't change our beliefs, but our policy are fluid based on the conditions and the learning that we learned from the practical experiences that we accumulate.
Well said. Well said. Well said. In other words, you adapt as required. Very good. Thank you for that. Thank you. And I suppose I know that there are, and I've noted there's some questions coming in via some people are sending questions in via Facebook and, of course, via our YouTube channel. And I'll come to those questions in a moment. But I'm very conscious that in answering my question, you haven't talked about your role as the national chairman, and what does that role entail, and how are you contributing to the life and times of the PAC, the Pan-African Congress movement of Azania? Just tell us a little more.
The party is led by our president, Comrade Mzwanele Nyonzo. That's the leader of the party.
Yes.
If you want to view the party structure. Mm-hmm. The national chairperson, the constitution called it a ceremonial position. So it has a different element than what a national chairperson of a party without a president will do. Mm-hmm. So my role is more spiritual, mm-hmm. more organizational culture orientated. Mm-hmm. So that's where the party is expecting a person who holds the position to play. Mm-hmm. So you'll find that the preparation of correct resolutions to be taken, follow up on resolutions that the party takes in terms of the spirit of the resolution.
I understand.
Whereas the concrete work is led by our president. Indeed. So that's might be the anomaly for other people who will see. So my training as a student, as you already highlighted, is that I'm trained as an engineer, industrial engineer in practice. Mm-hmm. So I bring that element to a very spiritual position that an engineer who's not touching the concrete matters. So the big work that we have done in the 4 years that I've been a chairperson now has been to strengthen internal governance of the party.
Yes.
To document processes. Yes. And regulating the party.
Absolutely.
That has been my preoccupation. Yes. How do we regulate our party? Because as African people, our weakness is that we have been lied to.
Yes.
That people of oral tradition, which Indeed. Is not true when you look at history. When you look at the Mali library and all the documents that were being banned by our enemies.
That's right.
And aspects that were stolen. We are not limited to oral tradition. Mm-hmm. So as a national chairperson, my contribution has been to drive this agenda of codify how do we do things here? how do we codify our culture as a party, so that it's not per individual memory, but we can all refer to a misbehavior or recognize good behavior based on what is documented, written, procedural, and push for practice. So if we can put it in different terms, I'm a chief change management officer of the PAC.
Perfect. And what you've elucidated, of course, is one of those profound facts. That is that propaganda that often or taught, not only to our own people, but to peoples generally, that our tradition, African tradition, is, of course, all, which was clearly a jam-blasted lie. Okay, if there's a part of the negative propaganda. Okay, I said earlier on that more than 98% of all of our artifacts, all of our manuscripts, our learnings, okay, are held outside the continent. In other words, part of our soul is held outside of our continent. The continuity between generations, the evidence of that continuity is held outside the continent, and we are experiencing that deficit. But we will rebuild. We will rebuild. And what you are exemplifying is that understanding where the deficit is, and you're ensuring that we codify, we log, we record our practices and share best practice with ourselves and those around us. Okay. Wonderful. I'm bound to ask this question of you. How can a non-Azanian contribute to helping the PAC achieve its mission, its aim, and objectives? How can we help you to achieve those three?
80% of the contribution is peer pressure. We need African people to have higher expectations of ourselves.
Yes.
We need our solidarity partner outside the African nation to have a higher expectation of ourselves.
Absolutely.
That is the biggest, and to reinforce that we are expecting more from you. That is the biggest contribution that we request. The other 20%, it's material contribution.
Yes.
Material contribution in terms of visiting Azania and getting practical experience. As I said, that we are big on campus, probably touring our campus for people who are in your area of passion, because the nation is holistic. If you are passionate on agriculture, we have a space for you to contribute on inspiring of our people on what you are doing, where you are doing in agriculture.
Yes.
We have access to big academia to be able to connect academic world outside Azania to the academic personnel inside Azania, because there's a lot of research that needs to be done. Not only research from a historic, because we get only limited to the historic analysis, but from the practical implementation, policy formulation, evaluation of policy, testing of policy in practical areas. That's a contribution that we would love to have.
Great.
Also, arriving to live in our communities for a while, the communities that we serve,
Yes.
and assist us to get those projects moving. In the same manner, we despise being parasite or people parasiting on us. We don't want to use anyone. We don't want to be used by anyone. So in the same vein, we would like particularly the African diaspora to consider investing in Africa.
Absolutely.
Azania being one of those destinations. We are not really discriminative when we talk about investing in Africa. But please be careful. There are many imposters.
Of course.
We are a damaged society. Don't underestimate what colonialism has done to us. So when you come spend time to know who you are dealing with. Before you bring in money, make sure that the social relationships are in the right place and you validated the social behavior of the people that you are working with. But come and invest in Africa. Those that feel that they need to come home, you are more than welcome. Come home. Please don't make this mistake. Don't come home and create an exclusive tribe.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
that is come and simulate in the African society.
Yes.
Come and be one of us.
Yes.
Don't come and create a society outside our society, because that's what has made life difficult
Yes.
for all of us to integrate as Africa and the Africans who are returning back home to their home, but they stick to sticking in their own room instead of moving across the yard and entering all the rooms of the family so that they become fully familiar with the family. We got our own crazy cousins. We got our own happy cousins. We
Yes.
are a normal family with everything that a family should have. So
No, good to know.
come and live with us.
Yes. I may visit you. Don't you worry. Not too distant future, sir. I may well visit you. It's long overdue. Okay, long overdue. I'm going to take one question from the audience, and our time's almost up. A question put to us by a listener. What plans are in place to bring down the unemployment in Azania? What plans would you put in place to reduce unemployment in Azania?
Our plan as a party, it's an agrarian reforms. We believe that the better use of land will absorb most of our people. Absolute, the globalization, that the decoupling that is happening in the world works well for us now, because before we could not put protectionist legislation. They would have come down on us quite heavy. As you
Yes.
know, they use economic sanctions quite aggressively. So that's a first element that will come through. In another meeting, I'll be talking about technology tomorrow. That you will be there, Councillor Martin.
I'm here.
Industrialization is very critical to colonial countries, imperialist countries have ensured that it de-industrialized countries that it exit from. South Africa, Azania is no exception. In the past 30 years, there's been big de-industrialization. And in the PAC government, we will force manufacturing and create a market for specific product that should be manufactured in the country. In the
Yes.
past election, local government in 2021, we unveiled one of our programs, which says that one product per municipality. Each municipality must be dedicated and must choose which product is the best of and provide the whole country with that product. So that driving of industrial capacity and deliberate industrialization of the country at the back of a strong agricultural economy. Currently, most of our best employment, it's public sector mostly. Secondly, it's mining or raw material.
Yes.
So we move from that raw material and force beneficiation. We already in the country we got a law that allows all minerals belong to the state.
Yes.
Therefore, we can easily say no minerals leave the country without being beneficiated.
Yes.
We already have a strong platform to move to the second level. Most people are in a hurry to go to tertiary industries. As the PAC, we will pick a look, keep our research, but our major focus is the basic. Eat what you produce
Yes.
and utilize what you produce on a daily basis.
Right.
Those fast-moving goods must be produced in the country
Yes.
instead of us importing toothpicks where we have a lot of trees.
Absolutely. It is just common sense, really. And I'm always reminded, and I have not mentioned her name on this show, which is curious, that there's a wonderful African woman from Nigeria who writes extremely well about that country and the continent. Her name is Ndidi Ichiwa. Okay. And one of her articles where she recites the enormous wealth that's in Africa across the entire continent, the continent that could hold United States, China and Europe and have still have much more space for its people. She notes that the wealth of Africa is not in its natural resources, it is in its people, the technologies that derive from those natural resources. Once that's understood, as you say, the natural resources are the wealth of the nation, and therefore, if others wish to acquire that natural resource, we should produce we should use that natural resource to produce the technologies that the world requires. Should not sell natural resources. But it's fascinating to hear you describe your agenda for the people to develop the agricultural sector would have significant and promote significant social change in Azania. I share that vision with you. And my very last question, I'm just conscious of your time. You've mentioned how those who are non-Azanians can contribute. Do you recall your website, ways in which those who are listening can contact and maybe even make financial contributions to the local party? Do you have a website? Can you recall the website address?
Yes, we have a website. It's called mypaconline.com. We also use the same handle for our Facebook and Twitter.
Can I ask my brother just to say it slowly, just so that I'll make sure the listeners hear what you said. Repeat the name, please, of the website.
www.mypaconline.com.
Excellent. kponline.org. Got that. Brilliant. I will share that information with our sort of general distribution. Our time is now up. But what I want to do, again, take this opportunity to thank you for your lifetime's work. And there's so much more to come. That much I'm assured. You are, and I said that earlier on, one of very few speakers who, within a minute of speaking, I was totally captivated by your words. And I'm going to say those words again. And you said it with such majesty. Before you began your speech, you said this: "Welcome, noble daughters and sons of Africa. I'm here in peace and love." Wow. Say it. You said it with such majesty. I cannot say it with your...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the nobility, nobles and sons and daughters of the great continent of Africa.
Hear, 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 hear. Thank you, thank you, Thank you for being an outstanding guest. You provide us insights into Azania, and you've taught us lessons in these past 60 minutes. And I hope this contributes to our broader de-brainwashing process, which you've beautifully articulated. We wish you well. We wish you success. We wish you long life and prosperity. Long may you continue to do so. My guest, thank you. Stay well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the person that you are, a big practicalist and a big advocate for practical work. We appreciate and we learn from you. Thank you.
My blessing to you. Bye-bye. Good morning to you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. There you are, listeners. There you are. An outstanding contributor to the community. Okay. And I've got to say, outstanding personality. And that was just 1 hour. I've heard him speak in other places. Absolutely outstanding. Now, the caller who called earlier on, this is your time. If you wish to call back, let's see if I can get that caller back on the line. I know that she was keen to share with us a crucial message. I'm going to try something I don't often do. I'm going to try to call that caller back. She had a key message. Let's see if this will surprise her. This will surprise her. Let's see if she picks up. She's not going to pick up. Okay.
Hello.
Caller, it's the motivator here. I had to shorten your earlier call. I know you have a key message, an important message to share with our listeners today.
Yes, I do. Good morning, everybody.
Go ahead.
I hope everybody's well today.
Mm-hmm. We are indeed. Yeah. We hope that you
Fantastic
are.
Stuff.
Yeah.
I am phenomenally skilled and phenomenally willed.
Wow.
So today I'm calling up to let you know about a Black History Month exhibition that's taking place at 231 Old Kent Road. The exhibition is for 2 days and it focuses on Black representation in British politics. It's from the 16th century to date, and we would love to see you there. It's also Southwark Council's commitment to launch a civic leadership program, which will increase representation of underrepresented groups, and we're rolling it out at first within the Caribbean and African communities across Southwark. So please turn up.
Wonderful. Can you just give us the date, the time, and the location one more time, slowly, please, so we can heard it.
So Saturday, the 29th of October, 12 to 5.
Okay, beautiful.
Sunday, the 30th of September, 12 to 4. And the location is 231 Old Kent Road.
Wonderful.
And that's SE1.
SE1. SE1. Do you know the other part of the postcode? Don't worry, that should be enough. In a way, they can use their search engines. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, my sister. That's a wonderful piece of news, and I will attend. Just so you know.
Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you all. Enjoy the rest of the Saturday.
Thank you so much. Bye bye. Bye bye. There you go. Oh, well, that worked. You know, that was live TV. That was live radio. You know, there you are. So, an important message, an important event. Again, as we do here on the Motivator Show, is to give light to our achievers, ordinary people behaving in extraordinary ways. And the percentage of those in our community is way above any other community, I note. It is truly facts and details that otherwise would not be shared via the radio, the TV, or the newspapers. If you really want to create history, you have to create the history. A history which is not announced and repeated by the people who created the history. It's history that will be lost to us all. So this is an example of us reminding ourselves of our achievers, the inspirators, those who put their lives before us all, those who've committed beyond the call of duty, those whose achievements have affected others. That's good community. And I know that indeed Councillor Ennen, who was a previous guest on this show, has committed significant work to fulfilling that particular mission. And I know for her, it has been truly an empowerment experience. Okay. So I want to recognize that particular piece of work, because not to do so would be a travesty in my view. Okay. And I hope as many of you will be able to go along to that event. It will be an important event. And I hope similar events will occur right across Britain, recognizing the achievement, those achievers from the African Caribbean, the Black communities, mixed communities. Recognize them and appreciate them. I believe it's such an important step forward. But I'm also conscious that during this month of Black History Month, and yes, the naysayers, yes, it should happen in every month, but just in this month, we put particular effort in reminding both ourselves and the communities of the contributions made by Black people, African people, Caribbean peoples of all around the world to British society. Okay. And British society, therefore, is made stronger, more vibrant, more resilient because of it. Okay. So let the naysayers say to one side, those with myopic view, short-sightedness, let them stay to one side. Let's shut them down so that they no longer hold this ground. Okay. What we've got to make sure is that the whole way forward. I'll just give it a further, because there have been a number of interesting announcements that have come through. In fact, if you have an announcement that you wish to make, I've only got a few minutes though, please call in now on 0208 133 5616. Call in now. I've only got 4 minutes. If you've got a quick announcement of an event that you'd like us to give publicity to, I'd be most happy to give you the necessary space to do so. Okay, and so if you've got an event, please feel free. But I just want to close on a comment I made earlier on about what's happening here in Southwark, in the constituency of Camberwell and Peckham. I want to applaud our current MP, Harriet Harman. She's been an exemplary MP for more than 30 years, okay? And she's decided to stand down at the next election. She's retiring, and I wish her well in her retirement. But a momentous event has happened. That those who are prospective candidates to go, or what we call long-listed candidates, to be selected and recommended by the local ward, okay? And the majority of those on the long list are indeed drawn from the continental African and African Caribbean communities. So it's highly probable, I assert, because each one of the candidates are individuals of the highest caliber. It is highly likely that for the very first time in the history of Southwark, that we will have someone with a diverse background representing this area. I sincerely hope my words have not put pay to this, of course, but I'm optimistic because I know the Southwark Labour Party. They are made up of people who have a good and strong sense of community, of fairness, equality of opportunity. We don't want advantage, we just want equality of opportunity. People who are sensitive and understand the dilemmas, the hardship, the traumas, the concerns expressed by my own community and other communities, and respond positively and understanding how to resolve, or at least be a part of that resolution. Okay? But without representation, reasonable representation, how can you purport to speak for the communities? Okay. So I'm immensely proud of the Southwark Labour Party. I know there are other Labour parties across the country who will be taking these steps, who do not need to be directed by central office, as is the case in the other party, the Tory party, in order to secure non-white MPs. Here, it has come from the local members. Here, this is the thrust. Yeah? What is reasonable, what is right. The local members have decided this. It wasn't decided by someone in Parliament, yeah? Recognising that their party isn't representatives, okay? It comes from the local members. So I applaud the Southwark Labour Party again. But I also want to give recognition, of course, to the management of GalaxyAfui.net, GalaxyAfui.net. I want to commend the presenter who will follow me. I believe it is either Sunra. I hope so. If it's not, I apologize. Okay, but nevertheless, it's the Motivator Show, where we translate our words into action. And remember, success is ours for the taking. Success is ours for the taking. Blessed to you all. Stay strong. Remember, stay healthy. Stay positive. And if in doubt, seek help. Until the next strong, I remain the motivator. Long may you continue well. Blessings to you all. Blessings to you all.